Welcome to the Upshift podcast, where changemakers meet and commune and find out how each other is doing their part in changing the world. Hey, and welcome. Today, my guest is Bernardo Mendez. We call him Bern because he is going to tell us all about dating and relationships as a coach. And men, I'm sorry, but you ought to listen in because he's going to tell us from a woman's point of view. And we're going to focus today on midlife dating. He says there is such a thing. Welcome, Bernardo. Tell us all about it.
Hey, Angel, how are you doing? Excited to connect with you. Yeah, there's such a thing as midlife dating, and I think it's one of the coolest things in life because you get a chance to redefine what you want. You have a lot more awareness of yourself.
Yeah,
You know what you don't want for sure. And then you have
absolutely.
a chance of a second act, so to speak, that can get you maybe something that you didn't get in the first part of your life.
That's wonderful. So, your relationship and dating coach, tell us a little bit about that. Where do you start with somebody?
Where do I start with? I mean, like, where do I start as a coach, or where do I start when I work with someone?
Well, I mean, kind of both. I mean, they show up, they sit in your chair, and they're like, I fail. I'm horrible at this dating thing. Where do you
Okay.
begin?
Well, I begin by helping that person understand that it's not that they failed at something, it's perhaps that they don't have no one's taught them the skills needed to create this experience in life. We're at this pivotal point in human history, Angel, where we have the biggest potential to experience the depths of intimacy that have never been experienced ever before. Meaning you can have someone who's your emotional partner who also matches with you intellectually, sexually. I mean, just that all around best friend. And at the same time, because we want so much out of a relationship, and you go to school for thousands of hours, but there's not a single class on intimacy or conscious connections or repairing interactions, that there's this normalization of this myth that love is the most natural thing in the world. And while I agree that the feeling of love is the most natural thing in the world, the experience of conscious love has never happened until recently. So to get that level of connection, learning certain skills is important. So the first thing I connect with when a client shows up is let her know that she's not flawed or wrong or broken, but that there's a few skills she can learn that can make all the difference in the world in being able to experience what she wants versus being stuck in situationships or toxic relationships or staying single without wanting to. There's a path to get there, but it starts from understanding that it's just the system's a little flawed in the ideas that we've been given relative to the skills that we have, and we just have to close that gap.
So, Bern, I would think that you're up against the biggest wall ever when you tell a woman who has been told all her life that, oh, you're fat, you're not pretty, you'll never be married, these things that start in childhood.
Yeah.
And then they have a broken relationship. And then they come to you and you're like, you're not broken, you're wonderful. And let me show you how. Tell me tell me how much, and maybe you're a miracle worker. I really hope you are, that you perform magic. But hitting that wall against a known tape that's in women's heads
Yeah.
and now in middle age, it's been there for a while.
Yeah.
How do you break free from that? How do you help them break free from that?
Part of it has to do with understanding that for that person who's basically received that message all along, it's very understandable that what they've determined is safe is
Hmm.
not necessarily healthy for them. At some point, basically believing that they're not beautiful enough or something maybe kept them from danger in some way. Their nervous system was wired to accept that that's the reality. But they've also had experiences in life. And part of my work is digging into those experiences where they thought one way or believed one way, but something shifted their perspective. So I don't have to train someone that more things are possible whenever she knows that there's things that already were really hard for her and she discovered a way out. Okay, if I've done this in this area of my life, what else might be possible? Part of it has to do with there's a mode of being that has you in that frame. There's a way you look at the world, there's thoughts that create that world, there's
Hmm.
obviously beliefs, but there's also an emotional state. And
Yeah.
from that emotional state, which I can call maybe a vantage point or maybe elevation. I'll give
Hmm.
you this example. Imagine that you're at the base camp of Everest and there's a storm going all around you. And I ask you, what do you see around you? Like, I see nothing. I see 1 foot in front of me. It's just a blizzard. So there's nothing here. That's basically an emotional state of someone feeling their entire life they're not beautiful, they're not smart enough, they're not good for relationships. Now, if you go halfway through Everest, you get maybe to camp number 2, and I ask you the same question, you can see the top of the mountain. You're not there, but you can see the top of the mountain. If you get all the way to the top of Everest, which is something hard to do, but let's say you manage to do it, and I ask you the question, what do you see? Is I see the most beautiful vista in the world. It's the same location, but different elevation. So elevation, in my way of looking at life, is the emotional state you're in is going to determine if you can break free from those beliefs or if you stay stuck indeterminately. So part of the work that I help someone do is how do we physiologically help someone out of their own crap, let's say, so to
Mm.
speak, so that they can, from that different vantage point, be open to receiving more, be open to changing their beliefs. Because I can tell someone you're beautiful and they say this is not true, or I can help someone feel more radiant, go out, and for the first time, maybe in 3 years, somebody stops them and says, hey, you're beautiful. And then it's not the coach telling you you're beautiful. It's a man that's a stranger. I didn't pay the guy to say this or do this, but the way you showed up enacted that visceral reaction from him. So you start changing your tune based on real life experience.
So you're talking my language when you say you're changing physically this emotional and mental belief system. How do you do it? If you have like 25 ways of doing it, give me one or two, but tell me, how do you physically change their perspective?
Well, there's a couple of ways. I'll say there's broad strokes that would be one way has to do with what are the rituals that sustain your default mode of being? So, for example, some people wake up and the first thing they do is they look at their phone, they scroll through social media, they look at the news, which already puts them in a really bad mindset and basically guaranteed, I mean, statistically, higher probability of feeling depressed because of those 5 minutes looking at the news. Then
Yes.
they wake up, take a shower, go to work. I mean, but what happens if you wake up and you dance, for example, for a few minutes? What happens if you meditate? What happens if you do conscious breathing? What happens if there's a few phrases you repeat over and over again, not because somebody told you, but because you actually wrote them down from yourself and you step into the truth of those words. So you have a ritual way of showing up in the world, not because you necessarily feel like it, but because you know it's good for you. It's like a class 2 experience. It's not good for you. It's good for you, but it doesn't feel good necessarily when you're doing it. So you do those things, and then when you show up at work, there's already different mindset taking place. So it's the physiology of the whole thing, which includes movement, includes breathing, includes nutrition, includes sleep. You could help someone in all the psychological ways you can, but if that part of their work, their life, which is sleep, is messed up, you're
Disrupted.
gonna be. It's like climbing Everest with 7 backpacks and no Sherpa. Like it's theoretically doable. But who's gonna do it? You know. So
Yeah.
that is part of it. The other part is really regulating your nervous system. One of
Yeah.
the most challenging aspects of dating is that there's a part of your nervous system that's going to be super triggered if you've not done it successfully, or if it brings back memories from the past, which means your limbic brain is going to be on fire. Your amygdala is going to be like telling you there's danger, even if there isn't. And so part of this whole thing is showing my clients when this trigger takes place, how are they going to self-soothe so that they can rewire their nervous system. So instead
Yes.
of going there, they go somewhere else. So that
Yes.
means conscious breathing would be a good way to do it, but there's other ways. But I think that it's something that is not just a thought process. Wrestle with your mind for 3 hours, or you could skip the rope for 1 minute and change something in 1 minute that would have taken hours, just thinking about it. So
Yeah.
it's more about the doing sometimes versus just thinking your way through it. Now, when you change that state, asking a better question is possible. Answering that question with more thoughtfulness is possible, that when you're just feeling triggered and feeling anxious.
Yes, this rewiring the brain. Again, you're speaking my language. Thank you. Getting up and dancing. Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Love that. I love that. So it's really about our thoughts, our habits. That's what I tell people, that you form habits in your brain. You thought one way, and then everything in your life supports that you are a certain way. And then it becomes a habit. Like thinking that way becomes a habit. What you're doing is you're changing that neural pathway so that less attention goes to the old way, more attention goes to the new way of thinking. So I'm getting it now. So if you could train or help a woman self train, I love that because the independence of it feels really good.
Yeah.
It's like try this ritual to redirect your focus on your beauty and your wit and your hysterical. Did you know how funny you are? Some people don't even know that. That if they're focusing on that, they're kind of leaving the trash behind. Is that right?
Yeah, I think you can work on your confidence, or you can act in ways that naturally spark that confidence. So you don't have to so hard think about it. It's like, how do I show up? Like, if you danced for half an hour before you left your house,
Yeah.
I don't have to show you how to be feminine. You'll walk in a way that basically is more exuding of your radiance than if you have to just think about it. So it's just really, it's some of that. And what you were talking about right now sparked this quote that I've heard, and I think it's been attributed to multiple psychologists in history. I'm not sure who the right person is, but the notion that freedom in life lies in that tiny space between the stimulus and response. So that's what I basically help my clients do. There's a stimulus that's going to help you feel a certain way, and
Yeah.
there's a natural response, which is the way you've acted your entire life. How can we take this moment to separate between this and this so that you have some free will in there to insert your what it is you want to have happen, and then those thoughts that you thought were reality, you can question them, you know?
I think it's called The Gap. And
Yeah.
I think it's Dr. Weir or Dwayne Dyer. I can't remember. One of those two guys. And it's about stopping in the gap instead of like
Yeah.
jumping the gap. It's like, wait, take that breath, change
Yes.
something.
Yeah.
Gives you the ability to respond instead of react.
That's the difference between somebody saying, I'm not beautiful enough, or saying, this is a thought that I've had for my entire life, but it's not true. So what's the truth? And then in that little moment saying, I'm radiant, I'm expressive. I mean, acting differently based on that recognition that you're not your thoughts, and that your thoughts, if you just buy into them, will tell you horrible things and will create strong limitations in your life.
Yeah. Hey, give us a, for instance, one of your clients that came in, she's this age, she was in this state of mind, and then tell us where she was afterwards and, give me her life now kind of thing.
There's different patterns in the way people show up. For example, one of my clients would be someone who shows up and she's never been married, even though she's 50 years of age, right? So her whole thing is it's never happened, so it's never going to happen, right? Somebody else might show up and she went through a painful divorce, through a horrible experience post divorce, and basically is went into a relationship that ended up feeling super exciting at the beginning, didn't work out, and then she has to start all over again. I mean, there's multiple points of starting, but the typical trajectory is one where they find themselves again, they find some truth into who they really are, they get a chance to discover what it is that they want now, and really important, which is part of the work I do, is help them distinguish between the non-negotiables and the nice to haves. People come to me right now with sometimes a laundry list of 50 items and they think they're all non-negotiables. When it
Mhm.
comes down to it, some of them aren't. So when I help them tweak that, they find a bigger pool of men available than they thought was available. Because let me give you a specific example. Let's say somebody shows up and says, I want a tall man. I don't think I've ever had a woman who shows up on my work that says, I want a short man. It's just never happened. I'm not saying but so most women want a tall man. So imagine that you're one of those women and you say, and the tall man that I want needs to be at least 6'2". If that
My.
if that's your beginning statement, that disqualifies 93% of men in America on your first wish. And that might seem a little crazy for some people listening to this, but there's other equally maybe non-necessary attributes that if you don't think too much about them, you mathematically get yourself out of the dating pool. So part
Yeah.
of my work is figuring out what's the truth of what you want that doesn't really lower your standards, but also opens up the possibility of finding someone who is available. And there's different end results. Some women want to get married, so woman gets married again, and they share the ring, and then they're married 5 years later. Another one wants to maybe find a life partner, not marriage, but life partnership, and that's
Mm.
doable. Somebody else might want to have someone who is a companion, not even live together, but spend amazing years traveling together and seeing each other multiple times a week, but each living in their own house. So, I mean, the majority of clients who come to me, they want marriage, and
Mhm.
that's the most typical result. But
Mhm.
I'm someone who helps them get what they want, not what society has told them they need to get. Which there's so many variations of possibilities now.
Okay, so now I've got a left field question for you.
Sure, go for it.
What do you think about shows like The Bachelor or The Bachelorette?
I mean,
I mean, be honest,
yeah.
honestly.
Than The Bachelorette. I think The Bachelorette is basically maybe one for three of the other ones. I think it perpetuates a few myths that are not cool. One is that imagine there's one guy and there's 24 women who are awesome and they all want him. That's a super scarcity mindset to begin with. Then there's the whole fakeness of the scripting of the show that people get to think this is real. They're feeding them what to say and how to say it in so much of the show, and also this whole physical connection so quickly before really vetting the person. I think on multiple levels, I would say a shitty experience
Right.
for the people taking place in that.
Giving the wrong message, but hey, there's millions, I guess, that watch it, that are
Yeah,
watching
absolutely. I
this.
mean, there's people who watch trains crash. It doesn't mean that's a good a good thing, you know?
Yes, but okay. So we've been fed, we all must have been fed some false way of creating relationship with each other. And how do you, because I don't think anything's changed on the outside of us, right? Like in our culture so much. But how are we changing? How are you changing the culture within us?
I think part of it is separating myth from reality, you know? I mean, people can say, I fell in love with a guy, or we can talk neurobiologically about what was happening in your brain that wasn't really falling in love, but was maybe a small addiction taking place. And when you recognize the truth of what's happening, then you can see the truth of what happened. Or we can talk about maybe, for example, in the United States, surveys show that at least 60% of the population think that the one. There's one person out of 4 billion human beings on this planet who is the right ideal fit for you. Now, I'm not here to argue against those people. Just it seems like it's a very restrictive belief that maybe puts people in a bind sometimes. Because what happens when you have the idea of the one and you're with that person that is toxic for you, but you think he's the one, then
Mhm.
you're going to work so hard to stay in that relationship because if you leave that person, then you missed out on the one. And so part of it, this whole thing is education. Help my clients understand, not based on my beliefs, but what at least I've seen work. What are some myths that are good questioning? For example, this idea of this love at first sight, you know, and I'm not here
Mm.
to dispute there's not there's people who genuinely fell in love with the person the first time they saw them. I mean, I'm not here to say that's not true. I'm just here to say that for most of us, that's not how it happens. So
Right.
when you go beyond the sparks first theory, which is what most people secretly optimize for, I mean, you can talk to anyone, man or woman. What are you looking for? Intelligence, kindness, passion. What they really go for is for someone who's hot and someone who has money and someone who is basically good and I mean has a good social status. So, but when you really take the time to figure out that sparks are not the most important thing in a relationship, although they're important, and that they
Yeah.
don't have to take place all at once, then you go from someone who would have left gold on the table. Let's say a client shows up on a date, she's like, I never want to see the guy again. Why not? Because I didn't feel it for him. Are there any red flags? From 0 to 10, how? I mean, like, it's like maybe a 5 in terms of energy. Like, I don't know. See him again. Come on. And then see him again. And then third time. And they end up getting married 2 years later because they were able to go past this myth of, I should know the first time I see him, my angels will sing and my heart will burst open and the fanfares, you know, in the sky. Like, if that doesn't happen, then people tend to leave gold on the table. So it's little things like that that seem simple, but
Yeah.
still play a part in most people's subconscious mind. That when you open up to the reality that doesn't have to be that way, you can create so many more possibilities for yourself.
Okay, so I've got another approach to this. Someone comes to you and they're in relationship, but they feel like they're growing out of the relationship. Have you had
Oh,
clients?
multiple times. I mean,
Okay.
I get the client who's basically single. I also get the client who's basically, should I stay or should I leave? You know?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
So how do you know? I want to know. I want to know because I mean, I'm fascinated with couples. I'm in a committed relationship, but I always ask like couples that seem successful, what it was, what's kept them together, what keeps them successful, because
yeah,
I'm fascinated with it. But I want to ask you,
yeah, yeah.
somebody comes to you and says, I just think I've grown out of this relationship. How do you know?
I mean, it's not an instant thing. I think there's lots of questions that need to take place because there's
Yep.
basically two sides to everything, right? It's his
Yep.
side and her side, right? So if somebody's saying like, I think I'm out of this, my first question is, tell me more. I mean, just open-ended question. Tell me more, so I can basically start listening to what she's saying, what she's not saying, and how she's saying it, so I can inform myself and ask even deeper questions. Now, we might come to the point that the point where we determine, okay, here's the crux of the thing. I don't feel seen, or I feel disrespected. So the first thing is to evaluate at which level is this disrespect taking place. If the guy's physically abusive, then like let's work things out. Might not be the. I mean, that'd be the worst horrible advice I could give someone. But if it's
Right.
something along the lines of we don't understand each other and we have a pattern of maybe getting into an argument and things spun out of control, then there's interventions that can take place that can actually show you that if you try this, and this, what happens, you know?
Hmm.
So basically testing a few different approaches,
Hmm.
figure out if there's room in the relationship for growth, for understanding, for she showing up differently, he showing up differently.
Hmm.
I mean, I've seen miracles happen. Like I have someone right now that I'm working with who started this work thinking that she was out of her marriage, and I mean, 3 months in, she's falling in love with this person again. But it's like really focusing on like why is this not working? What can you say to him that he can understand? And if you say these things, will he show up the right way? And many times there is that showing up. Sometimes there isn't. You know, if somebody shows up and let's say it's a woman, and we test a few different things, and the things are not changing. The guy's not open to changing. He's not open to therapy or couples therapy. Like, there's really not much room to grow. But if the person's open, there's possibility. You know?
Yeah, if they're willing to try, it seems like that's good enough to stick with it, you know? If they're not, it's like, well, I don't know. Okay, wait, I got more.
Yeah.
So in the world of aging, there's things biologically that happen, especially with men, but with women too, physically, sexually, that physicality, how our physicality changes, our hormones change, our sexual desire changes, our ability to have sex changes.
Mhm.
And if you have people that are not changing at the same rate,
Yeah.
how do you help them? Because some of this stuff is not mental or emotional, it's just plain old physical, but it's
Yeah.
affecting everything emotionally. How do you deal with that?
Depends on what the situation is. I mean, you might be talking right now about ED, for example. If it's erectile dysfunction, there's things that can be done about that, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. I mean, yeah. There's aging, and I just saw a Harvard review on sex after 60, or and it goes through and explains how things change. But how do you reignite, even though you just said you did, but how do you reignite intimacy? Because it doesn't have to be sexual. I mean, well, I think we all know that.
yeah,
Tantra is a beautiful expression of non-sexual, really, really connecting deeply.
yeah,
But how do you spark? It's just say it's been so long, right? It's been so long. We just, don't think about it anymore. It's been years. Oh my
yeah.
God. But it's been years, and they're like, how do you begin to approach getting intimate again?
The tipping point, or if you were to say the domino that topples all the domino pieces in situations like this, is vulnerability. Because here's the thing: in a situation like that, there's two human beings probably both feeling some level of missing out and disconnection and loneliness. I mean, being lonely doesn't just happen being alone. It just happens in relationships. And when it happens in a relationship, sometimes it's more painful because you have someone, but you still feel alone, right?
Yeah,
So it's something as simple as starting a conversation. And sometimes there's mediation around that because couple may not know how to do that in terms of how do you spark a conversation where you can, from your heart, express not in a way that is shaming to the other person or putting the other person down or making them wrong. Here's where I'm at in life and here's what I'm craving. Here's what I'm missing. How about you? And starting from that super honest place of
yeah,
rawness, and from there, when you see the other person basically hand trembling, voice shaking, and there's some of that in you as well,
yeah,
that's the beginning of something novel and creative and intimate.
yeah,
Intimacy is about feeling and being seen and seeing the other person. So if there's been some of that, and for many reasons that not taking place, starting with simple, profound conversations that allow you to know the other person more is amazing. Because people get to think, I've been with somebody for X number of years, I know them. You may not know them today. So
right.
there's games you can play where you can ask each other questions and get to know the depth of that human being in ways that wouldn't show up in dinner talk or in meeting out with friends. But I mean, I've had someone I recently recommended this to. They weren't feeling connected to their partner, and I said, "I want you to go with your partner tonight or tomorrow as soon as possible because there's a fight, an argument, the whole thing, and I want you to ask that person. This is the one question you're going to ask each other all night, and half the night is your answer, half the night is his answer. And the question is, if you were going to speak with me for the last time tonight, what would you want me to know?"
Like you're dying or something?
Yeah, like you're dying or something's gonna happen and you're gonna go to war for 20 years. I mean, like, what would be the thing that you'd want me to know if we were never gonna speak to each other again? Same thing from the other person.
Wow.
Why? Because that's gonna spark something maybe that hasn't happened in 20 years, something raw and real that puts your heart at the forefront of the conversation and the other person too. And then from that energy, so much more is possible. Because you're not
Wow.
dealing with the minutia BS of who's taking the laundry and like those things are important, but there's deeper conversations that can be had with a simple prompt can be a 30-minute conversation.
I think that is a great way almost to bring this to somewhat of a close because that is
Sure.
so thought provoking. And I do want to let the listeners know that a couple of things that you said, I want them to hone in on, and that is in communication. First of all, communication is king between anybody, two people. But notice how when he said that to be vulnerable, you start with I'm feeling this way and not you. The minute I know this, a minute you use the word you've shut them down because you're not hearing them. And the vulnerability comes from, I'm feeling this way.
Yeah.
And you come to the table open, and this is just where I am right now. How are you feeling? Is such an easier way to invite somebody into the conversation than to start with a you comment. You
Yes.
agree? Yeah.
I agree with that. I think that there's a book that's an easy read for most people if you want to take a look at this. It's called The 7 Levels of Intimacy. And Matthew Kelly, I think, is the author. I mean, it's been a while since I read it, but it talks about different levels of intimacy people talk through. And the highest level, the highest on the rung, the one that's the most intimate is authentic needs. There's something really raw about sharing. Here's what I really need. Why? Because the person can ridicule you, can reject you, can ignore you. It's really, really vulnerable, you know? So, but being able to say, here's where I'm at in life, and here's what I would love, here's what I crave, here's what I long for.
Yeah.
That puts you in a really connected space with the other person. If there's that other person's a conscious human being, where you can have more, you know, of what you want.
Well, it's kind of like in that highest realm, you are being seen because when you can just let all your guard down, here's the good, bad, and the ugly and the gritty right here,
Yeah.
right now.
Yes.
And this is what I need. I think I need that, whatever it is. Maybe you
Yeah.
need to go and feed children in Africa for a year. That's what I told my partner. I'm like, look what you're getting into. I have, I travel, I have needs to do,
Yeah.
big things. And they have to be kind of on board. But I think that when you can, and I know this, even with good friends, when you can be totally open and just let the other side out and feel like they're corralling you, loving you, non-judging, just like, tell me everything.
Yeah.
That's such a great space. And that we go back to that wonderful question. I love this. I want everybody to remember this. What would you say to me if this was the last conversation we ever had?
Yeah.
God, that is very, very powerful.
Yeah.
I love that. So, Bern, how do we find you? Do you have a book? How do we keep in contact with you?
Yeah, the easiest way to find me is on my website. You can go to bernmendez.com. So that's BERNMENDZ.com. And you have links to my YouTube channel there. You have a link to a quiz you can take to find your attraction blind spots and also connect if you want to work with me at some point.
Nice. Love that. Thank you so much for the work
Thank
that
you.
you do. God knows we need it. Thank you for spending time with us today.
Thank you, Angel. I appreciate this conversation.
Thank you to Bern Mendez. Oh my goodness, relationship coach. And I asked him after the show was over why he did it. And you can assume that it's the fulfilling relationships he gets to see years and years and years down the road after spending time with him. Wow, that's really great. And thank you to my listeners for staying with me and listening and being great people that you are. Get to know me better. And go to my website, angelhoward.co. Everything's in there. I have some retreats coming up and a new book coming out, teaser there. And hire me to speak at your next gig. I love to edutain people on being in their bodies and making their lives better and those around them. All right. Thank you for listening to The Upshift. I'm Angel Howard. And until next time.